The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
The black and blue division is back. The number one spot in the NFC North up for grabs.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Lauren, I was saying to my audience earlier this week, I think the biggest Packers game in over a decade, Packers-Bears game. And I don't know if I can't think of a game that had more stakes for both teams. There's been bigger Bears games, I think, against the Packers, like that Mitch Trubisky season. They win. That was a big one for Chicago, but it was a bad Green Bay season. This feels like, to me, the biggest Packers-Bears game that we've had since the Randall Cobb catch in 2013.
And it'll be the biggest one we've had until 2 weeks from now, when we have the biggest Bears-Packers game. Like it's collectively, these two games are super critically important, not only for just like NFC North, who's going to be first place, but then also the playoff seeding that then plays off of that. Like, there is so much at stake. The other 3 games left on the schedule matter much, much less for both of these teams.
It feels like the cluster of games we had in 2010, where the Packers play the Bears the last week of the season. The Bears have nothing to play for, and Lovie Smith decides to play his guys, and they lose. They lose the game at Lambeau. Green Bay gets in. They get to the playoffs. We remember what happened in the NFC Championship game in Chicago. For anyone that doesn't remember, B.J. Raji sealed the game on a pick 6. It was actually Sam Seals who really, I had forgotten that game still, even after the B.J. Raji interception, still came down to an interception on the last drive against Caleb Haney. And the Packers won the Super Bowl that year. That comparison, maybe we can make it in a couple weeks. Maybe we can make it in 6 weeks when one of these teams is making a deep playoff run. So we'll hold off on that for now. Lauren, I want to ask you flat out, this team is the number 1 seed in the NFC. How good are they really, though?
So I don't think they're like, quote unquote, the best team in the NFC, but I also think we look at the NFC right now and go, who is actually really good? Who is infallible? And I think the Bears are right there in that conversation with everyone else. Like, I still find myself feeling like, even though the Rams just lost to the Panthers, they're probably the best team in the NFC. But beating the Eagles the way that the Bears did, and seeing the Rams lose to the Panthers, see the Packers lose to the Panthers and Browns, see, all these teams have lost to bad teams, Bears included in that. And so they're all fallible, and no one is this like juggernaut at the front of the NFC. So I think the Bears can beat any of these other NFC teams on any given Sunday, but also like no one's going to be surprised if any of these teams lose to each other.
Well, and here's what I've been saying on radio all week and on my show, and despite what Bears fans might tell you on social media as well, the Bears do 2 things at an elite level. And there aren't that many teams that do one thing at an elite level, much less 2. This is the best run team in the NFL. And they are the best turnover team in the NFL. Not just that they create a bunch, they do over 2 a game, which is crazy and will probably like come down at some point. But like, how many games are there to go, right? So like at some point you've just banked. This was Luke Braun's thing in 2022 with the Vikings. Like at a certain point, you've just banked enough wins that you get into the playoffs and it doesn't matter. But when you can do 2 things at a super high level, and one thing is definitely something that translates week to week, playoffs, the run game travels. And the way the Bears are running the ball, that's going to travel. They are kicking people's asses up front. And I'm just, it was startling watching the tape of the Eagles game, where it's just like you and I could have picked up some yards in that game playing running back.
And it's crazy because like the Bears still don't have a really solid left tackle right now either, right? It's not like, oh, this is left to right, the 5 best offensive linemen in football. I mean, they're one of the better groups for sure. They're playing at a high level, but like they have a rookie second round pick playing a left tackle who didn't get in the starting lineup until, halfway through the season due to injury. It wasn't even like they were ready to try and force him out there just yet. And so they're living and dying.
Probably don't have an all-pro in that group, do they?
Say that again?
They probably don't have an all-pro on the offensive line.
Joe Thuney will probably be an all-pro again. I mean, he just by reputation, those guys kind of get it every year, and they're playing pretty well. And Darnell Wright has been sniffing in the Pro Bowl conversation, we'll see. I mean, again, it's sort of like reputationally winning team with an offensive line playing well tends to get a boost there.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I saw Sean Ryan was like top 5 at center. He's played 2 games at center.
Yeah, there's always some flukiness to that, but like they're just communicating so well and on the same page. It was something that they were slow to get going early this season, and just like same with the running backs, trying to just kind of feel and read. Okay, how quickly does Jonah Jackson get to the second level? How quickly can Drew Dahlman, reach block that center, and just trying to find that perfect timing. And like now it's all clicking, and I think Bears fans are just holding their breath that this group can keep staying healthy, because a few of those guys have an injury history that hasn't really been a problem this season. So fingers crossed the Bears are getting healthy at the right time.
Yeah, Jonah Jackson, I mean, he was unbelievable against the Eagles, against a really good interior. Like Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, that's one of the best 1-2 interiors in the NFL. And it was like they didn't even play for most of the game. I mean, it was really a sight to behold. Now, the other side, like I thought, just between friends here, I thought Jalen Hurts was an atrocity. I thought the offensive line, the offensive design, like the Eagles, I don't know what's going on in that offense. That is like, if you watch the offensive design and execution of the Eagles next to the Bears and the Packers, they play a different sport. I mean, really, they do. Like, imagine how good that Eagles team would be with Ben Johnson or Matt LaFleur calling plays.
Yeah.
They wouldn't lose.
It's crazy to see like that kind of talent squandered over there. And I think on the opposite, you see
it's a shame. What a shame.
In Green Bay and Chicago, like maximizing talent. And that's not something we've seen in Chicago for a long time, where you feel like, wow, they're really getting the most out of this guy. And he really elevated the level of play of someone who you thought you weren't sure how great he was going to be, but wow, actually they're using him really well. And it's been kind of one of the big turnarounds for the Bears. It's just like even some of the same players that have been here for a couple of years are playing better. And I think on both sides of the ball, they're seeing like real coaching and development. It's a foreign concept for us.
I asked this question only like 35% as a troll. In your life, how many times did you go into a Bears-Packers game thinking the Bears have the coaching advantage?
Ooh, the coaching advantage. There were definitely some times even in the Lovie Smith era, like offensive coordinator wasn't necessarily feeling like an advantage, but there were some Packers defensive coordinator days that I recall not being particularly impressive. I would say one hand. We can count on one hand. I don't know if I can recall all the specific.
I think the one I think of is 2018, because Matt Nagy was looking like, won Coach of the Year that year, right? Who was the DC on that team?
Vic Fangio.
Okay, so then okay, like Vic Fangio rocks. And so like that, I think you could make the case that year because McCarthy had overstayed his welcome in Green Bay, and that team had sort of tuned him out. I don't know how many other times you really could have said it, just because either the head coach was adult or one of the coordinators was, not an NFL coach, or like, you know what I mean? So this is a very different feeling right now for Ben Johnson. I thought it was really honest from Jalen Johnson when he said, like, this is probably the most confident we've been for one of these games, which is a tacit admission that he's played a lot of football against Green Bay where they did not have this level of confidence. And that makes sense, right? Like when you have success, it breeds confidence in your teammates and in the coaches that, hey, what we're doing here works. And that's a stark turnaround from anything we've seen in Chicago for a long time. And I really genuinely do not mean that as a troll at all. Like that's a real thing.
Well, and I think the big difference is like Matt Eberflus and Matt Nagy never ripped their shirts off after a win to kind of instill that confidence and get free hot dogs from the city of Chicago. Like, as much as like I've seen Packers fans kind of roll their eyes at it or whatever, like there is a real difference in the energy here that we haven't seen. Matt Nagy had them doing like a club dub in the locker room is what they would call it after wins, but like it was more just like a little bit of like a party. And this is more like guys are really like locked in, fired up, ready to go play another football game as soon as one gets done.
I think if you are the kind of person who thinks that Ben Johnson comes off generally as disingenuous, I understand how you could also view that as a put on and those kinds of things. But also, like, I don't know, a lot of the stuff that is coaching is artifice, right? Like it's all just an act. Like watch Dabo Swinney one time at the podium. Like, come on, like that's, you kind of have to have some of that. This is all fake. This is all entertainment. It's a charade in a lot of ways. It's silly, and it's okay to be a little silly. Like it's fine. Like Bill Belichick wore a cutoff hoodie on the sideline, for crying out loud. Like, let's not be too serious about this.
Well, and that's the contrast with Ben Johnson. I think why it works so well in Chicago is like when you watch him on the sidelines, he does not emote, he does not react. Interception, he doesn't get mad. Touchdown, he doesn't smile, he doesn't celebrate. He's not high-fiving guys. He is just like laser focused, locked in. And so then I think like after the game, he kind of just lets that out and kind of releases that in a way that I think the players can kind of feel that like it's that like party it's like business in the front, party in the back kind of.
So Ben Johnson is the mullet of coaches, is what you're saying.
Yeah, whereas like, well, Dan Campbell has the mullet like lifestyle, but Ben Johnson has the mullet like functionality.
Yeah, listen, I think spiritually Dan Campbell has a mullet. Like I know that he doesn't, but like I can just picture it, and it would have to be one of those like Jerry Curl mullets where it's like super curly, one of those like peak 80s mullets. Like spiritually, he has one of those. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, FanDuel.com is the place to go place your live NFL bets all season. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
Two teams going in opposite directions, meeting up for a huge Thursday night showdown in Detroit.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Looks like the Cowboys are back, right? There's life again at Jerry World.
I don't know if they're back, but they're playing good football. And for Cowboy fans, that's honestly all we wanted to see after how bad the season started, just to have them start to play better and to have some meaningful games, Matt. I mean, listen, you and I have both been through this where you're covering a team that's playing games into, November and December that just don't matter for anything. And for a Cowboys team that started off the season was 1-3 and 1 point, to have a game like this on Thursday Night Football, it's not quite a playoff game, but it's pretty darn close. It's a lot of fun.
What's been the biggest difference? We'll get to the Lions in a second, but what's going on that's made this work? Obviously, the additions to the D-line. I love what the interior's done, and it seems like some of your guys that you drafted too, including Azaraku, are starting to show up.
Yeah, it's surprising that good players make your defense better, right? Like it's not a huge surprise when you add someone like Quinnen Williams. Suddenly your run defense gets better. You're able to create more pressure on the quarterback, and they've really stumbled into something here with these 5-man defensive line looks where they get all three of their defensive tackles on the field. Kenny Clark, Osa Odighizuwa, and then Quinnen Williams. You mentioned Donovan Ezaraku. He is Pro Football Focus's highest graded rookie so far this year. He only has 2 sacks, and if you look at the box scores, you won't be overly impressed, but really strong run defender. He's creating a bunch of pressure. So you've got this defensive line that's starting to win their individual matchups, and they're covering up some of the mistakes on the back end, but you're also getting guys back healthy on defense, including Savon Ravel, their 3rd-round pick from East Carolina, Kalen Carson, who missed the first half of the season. Trayvon Diggs might be playing in this game. It's not a dominating unit by any stretch, but it's a much improved unit compared to what we saw in the first 2 months of the season.
6-5-1 Cowboys, a 7-5 Lions. Big game and a home game here, Marcus, for this team. And I don't really know where to go and what to tell you about storylines here in Detroit. And for the Cowboy viewers and listeners here on Locked On Cowboys, you're not facing last year's Lions team, and you're not facing 2 years ago's Lions team, but they have the capability on Thursday night to show up, man up. They haven't lost 2 in a row in 3 years, and win a football game they must have. And they just aren't sharp. They're not crisp. They're making mistakes, whether it's penalties. There's been a lot of injuries, and I do think they're going to play that card at the end of the year unless they make a run. But they're just not playing Lions football. It just has not been the same look and the same team. Yet here they are with a chance at home to kind of right a wrong from last week on Thanksgiving. I know you saw it, and where the Packers really kind of beat them up a little bit. Yes, it was a close game, and yes, the Lions made a nice run to get it within 7, but they couldn't close, and they haven't been playing all that well at home. A bad home loss to Minnesota, losing to Green Bay. narrowly escaping against a 2-win Giant team at Ford Field. I'm hoping that this team comes out with a purpose and a fervor on Thursday, but I just don't know. I'm scratching my head like you are, Marcus.
Yeah, I mean, coaches will always say injuries aren't an excuse, but again, you and I have been covering the league for long enough that we know that it is, right? At some point you get to, where you just don't have starting caliber players on the field. It seems like Detroit is there on the offensive line right now with their interior, and it seems like they're that way in the secondary right now with Terrion Arnold. He's out for the year with a shoulder injury. Kirby Joseph is dealing with a knee injury. You've got some guys that have made some plays, including like a Meek Robertson, but they're not Terrion Arnold and they're not Kirby Joseph. And at some point, the lack of talent just starts to win out.
It's interesting. You brought up the secondary. I mean, they need Kirby back, and we'll see if he can go on Thursday and give it a try with a giant knee brace on. Terrion Arnold has been kind of a mystery for 2 years. First round pick, I thought would have a better year this year. Calvin Shepard, the D coordinator, said during camp, there's a guy that's going to have a breakout year this year. It's been him. It would be him. It really hasn't been. When he's been healthy, he's been better, but he hasn't been healthy. Now, you mentioned out for the year. Lions have been able to piece together the secondary with some backups. Rock Yassin and others have played pretty well. Their biggest issue has been getting to the quarterback. And in watching you guys on Thanksgiving Day and the week before, heck, everybody watches the Cowboys. They're always on wherever you are. It looks like Dak's comfortable. And the Chiefs, I know, tried like crazy to blitz him the other day. And, man, they picked it up. And
it's been one of the best parts of their offense this year is their ability to beat the blitz. And it helps when you've got two receivers like CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. And that's honestly probably what Detroit was hoping this year with Amon-Ra St. Brown and, Jameson Williams. But with Amon-Ra dealing with an ankle injury right now, we still don't know if he's going to go in this game. Even if he does, he's going to be severely compromised. It really helps to have these two receivers that can get open at will against man coverage or zone coverage. And one more thing from the Cowboys side of things, they've been saying that this is going to be their toughest game of the season. And it's easy to understand why. You're playing on the road. It's 7 days from Thursday to Thursday, but it's still kind of a short week because of, usually you get 10 days off after playing a Thursday game. That's not the case here. It's a Lions team that really their backs up are against the wall. I think we're going to see Dan Campbell be ultra aggressive. But if they can win this game and they can get to 7-5-1, that'll mean they've won 4 straight games. The rest of their schedule is pretty easy, including games against the Giants, the Commanders, Minnesota. They feel like they could really go on a run, but they've got to take care of business against a team that they remember running up the score on them last year. So it's going to be a ton of fun to watch.
Yeah, these two teams have played some wild games the last couple of years. Obviously, the controversial reporting game in Dallas a couple of years ago with Taylor Decker and Dan Skipper. Heck, Marcus, every single time they announce that number 70 is eligible at Ford Field, just on a regular play with Dan Skipper, the crowd goes nuts. They love it. It's become a bit here, and that was 2 years ago. And then obviously, like you said, last year, everybody loved the way the Lions just boat raced the Cowboys, but that was the day Aiden Hutchinson was lost for the year when he broke his fibula and tibia. So it was like, yes, you're celebrating a big Lions win against America's team, but that was the Aiden injury day. So it's weird timing now that they're playing now. Again, I'm not sure Lions fans know what to expect Thursday night. This could be the Lions team that comes out with Jahmyr Gibbs and Jameson Williams and Goff has time to throw, and boom, they're running it down the field and doing a great job offensively, and the defense is stepping up. Or it could be early on, something happens, a mistake, a special teams error, CD gets open, Ferguson in the seam, and man, all of a sudden it'll get a little quiet in that building. They need a fresh and fast start in this game. Or else, I mean, fans have said, like I said, they sat through a rough one against the Giants. The Vikings home loss was bad. And then this past Thursday against the Packers was not good. So they need to get the crowd into it, and they need to start the game pretty quickly.
Unfortunately, that's where the Cowboys have been really bad. Against the Eagles, was it 2 weeks ago? They gave up 21 points in the first quarter. It was a disaster. They had to fight their way all the way back to win that game. And even on Thursday against Kansas City, Cowboys had an interception on the first drive. The Chiefs scored in 2 plays after that, and they were down 7-0 in the first 2 minutes of that game. So I'm going to be curious to see, can the Cowboys get off to a faster start, because they believe that the game script is going to be really important here. If you can take a lead and then lean on your running game and make Jared Goff have to be a drop back passer with this pass rush, that's how they can steal this game. It's going to be fun to watch.
All that talk about the AFC South not being good, and the Jaguars and the Colts got a big one coming up this Sunday.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
The biggest story for me is Daniel Jones. I picked y'all to finish dead last this year because I was so unsure about the quarterbacks. Well, Daniel Jones, at least for 10 or 11 weeks, had me convinced that I was dead wrong. Jake, what's been going on lately, though?
Yeah, we've kind of come full circle on Daniel Jones and the Colts altogether. At first, just like you said, the vibes were a little low. People were lukewarm on him, even internally here within kind of the Colts sphere of things. He was a pleasant surprise, seemed to be the perfect marriage with Shane Steichen. Things were going great. I think they were like 7-1 to start out the year. And then they just hit some sort of major hiccups around Pittsburgh. Between Pittsburgh and Atlanta, he turned the ball over like 6 times, was sacked 12 times in those 2 games. And in the last 4 games overall, from now through then, the Colts have dropped 3 of their last 4. It's very peculiar how to look at this entire thing, though, because in those 2 games, Jones was definitely a problem. Now, with the Atlanta game down the stretch, late in the 4th quarter and into overtime, he made some really clutch throws, redeeming his performance a little bit because the Colts won. But then you look at Kansas City, you look at Houston in these last 2 weeks, 0-2 in those 2 games, but he's played better, despite that fractured leg, believe it or not. Kansas City, I thought he was really, really good through the first 3 quarters. And then in the 4th quarter, everything just fell apart. Teams know they can just blitz the heck out of the Colts right now. And his lack of mobility is a problem. He is not the problem, but his lack of mobility is. So that's been kind of a thing. He's been relegated to being just kind of a pocket passer right now because they can't use all the bootlegs and all the getting him out and moving that they normally would, and kind of cashing in on all the stuff that works so well early in the season. So he's doing well in what he's physically able to do right now. But defenses that are going to bring the heat, and the Colts have faced some really aggressive ones, they're getting home right now. And it's just limiting what the Colts can do. And so far, they haven't had a good answer for countering that.
Yeah.
We all can see it coming, and the Colts should be able to see it coming too. But defenses are just still getting home. And the offensive line in general has not really held up its end of the bargain the last few games. So that's just caused quite a few issues as well.
I think, this is proof positive that maybe a fracture or a broken bone is actually worse than a high ankle sprain, because we've heard that for years, and dudes don't play with high ankle sprains, but they play with broken legs and broken fractured fibulas. Trevor Lawrence hasn't been hurt, but the roller coaster that you're talking about, it hasn't occurred the same way with him as it did with Daniel Jones, whereas Daniel Jones was lights out for 7, 8, 9, 10 games, and then all of a sudden the bottom falls out. That used to happen with Trevor Lawrence every other quarter. Now, I say used to because I think it stopped like 2 games ago. So, you got to take that with a grain of salt, but you can see the progression and the impact that Liam Cohen has had on him. And you got to forget about all of the draft expectations and just look at it for what it is. The last couple of weeks, the last few weeks, we can check on True Media, man, that we always use. Trevor Lawrence has been very, very good over the last 2.5 games. He had a bunch of turnovers early against Arizona, fixed it, got it together, and now with the addition of Jacoby Myers and with the welcoming back of Brenton Strange and Brian Thomas Jr., it seems like now you can start see the promise of what this is supposed to look like, what a Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence combo looks like. The thing that gets me, though, is nobody picked these 2 teams except David Harrison from Locked On Commanders. He picked the Jaguars to win the AFC South. But this is new blood, not only in our division, man, but at the top of this thing headed into the playoffs. And with Houston going to Kansas City, it's going to be fun watching to see how this shapes out. I can't ever recall a time where it seems like every single week there were games that were just so important to the schedule and important to teams' playoffs hopes. We never usually see it. Usually somebody has to wait on somebody else to do their work, but now these teams are playing each other.
Yeah, I think the Colts losing to Houston last week officially made it playoff mode for all three of these teams at the top. Because Jacksonville and the Colts are now tied, and then Houston's just a game behind them. And then the Colts in their final 6 games had 4 AFC South matchups. So an incredibly valuable final section of the roster or of the schedule. In Jacksonville, obviously the Colts have not won there since 2014. Don't know what kind of witchcraft is going on there, but it does not matter how bad the Jags are that year or how good the Colts are that year. Going on the road against the Jaguars is some enormous problem. Andrew Luck got shut out there in his final performance at Jacksonville. Yeah, so whatever it is, that's a tough matchup. The Colts close out the season week 18 in Houston. And then the 2 non-division games they have in Seattle. Seattle's been one of the best teams all year. And again, it's in Seattle. And then they have the 49ers on Monday Night Football. So
I know it sounds like I'm taking shots of tequila every time you say that. I go, that is daunting.
It
and
is
that's 2 games against the Jags, another against the Texans. Is that it?
Yep.
Oh my,
not fun. They already swept the Titans. They got that done and out of the way already. But yeah, it's their final 5 games are brutal, and the playoffs start now. I really don't know that they can drop another one. They can maybe drop one and get a wild card still, but if they want to have hopes of this division, they can't lose any more division games.
Yeah, I know what you mean. The Jaguars aren't quite there, but they still have another game against the Titans. They have the 2 against the Colts. They do have a tough game at Mile High against Denver, but then they also play the Jets. But the thing about the Jets, man, you can't count anybody out these days. So
they're weird. I feel like trying to ask you specific questions about the Jaguars is almost as challenging to answer specific questions about the Colts right now. But, you had mentioned Brenton Strange returning was a big deal for Trevor. And that did seem to coincide with Trevor really leveling his playoff and getting back to that kind of upward trajectory. And then Brian Thomas Jr. from afar, from my ignorant perspective, not watching the Jaguars all the time, everyone was saying how low of a season he had been having. Now it sounds like maybe things are on the up and up a little bit, but yeah, I got to get a gauge on this passing game because the Colts also, Jacoby Myers, the Colts have faced Myers already when he was with the Raiders this year, and Charvarius Ward kind of took care of that issue. Now Ward is a little bit of a different player at this point right now than he was at that point because the next week he would suffer kind of a devastating concussion, and this will be his 3rd game back from it. So I'm very interested to see how that Jaguars passing game has evolved from then to now.
That's a great question. I think what happened was there were a whole bunch of things at play, and I even discussed this yesterday on my show. First of all, there was how were you going to ingratiate Travis Hunter? Second, we're all learning a new offense, right? With new things to see, new things to do. And the coaching staff came in, and I think they determined that you had high IQ football players in Travis Hunter and Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr. So we're just going to throw it at them and see what happens. And people were criticizing, saying they're only using Travis in the slot. Turns out later on, Liam Cohen actually explained that F position is the one that is the most difficult to learn. So they were actually leaning into Travis's work ethic when it comes to that and his football IQ. But if you don't really understand that, it's like, well, they should just simplify things and just throw him the ball and he'll catch jump balls. That's not the way it works, long or short term in the NFL. So what happened is BT got off to a slow start, but he was also banged up, had a little bit of a shoulder issue, and then he had an ankle injury. And what was going on? He was double clutching balls. Like ball hit him, he'd double, and then he'd get hit, and the ball would come out. They were learning each other, learning an offense, learning everything, trying to get a rookie involved. And at first it was just clunky and you couldn't tell the reasons why. Then those guys got hurt and they go out and make an addition of a professional pass catcher who gets it and understands. And then they bring him in, and all of a sudden, we're going to start him outside because he plays more of the slot position, but it's too difficult for him to learn that on the fly. So that told you that what they were actually asking Travis Hunter to do was the most difficult thing when it came to their wide receivers. So sitting and watching has helped BT. I think Brenton Strange was ready to bust out. Parker Washington has busted out and has been one of their best players. So now what has happened is I think everything caught up. So from a little positive note, I said, Travis Hunter is now, instead of getting drafted by one of the worst organizations, will come back from injury next year to potentially a division winning team and a wild card team. So take that for what it's worth. And that's all that happened. And I think Trevor just had to get used to it. And then Liam Cohen just said, hey, let's let it rip, man. Let it rip. He's coaching. It's just that sometimes we get a chance to see how the sausage is made and we don't like it. But we have to wait for the results and give these guys a chance to do their job.
I like that. Yeah, and I'm not going to lie. Brenton Strange is definitely someone who I've got some concerns about because there's been ingredients there for the Colts to be vulnerable over the middle of the field. In breaking routes and crossers, like all that stuff has kind of plagued them at times this year. And easily the worst part of their coverage is the linebackers, Zaire Franklin and Jermaine Pratt. Now, those guys have really stood up against the run, but I just look at like a Brenton Strange and what they might be able to do in the passing game with him. But how's the Jags pass rush? Because like I think numbers can be a little misleading because the Colts are like number 6 in sacks right now. But if you watch the Colts every week, it doesn't feel that way. You know what I mean? So statistically, that's one thing. But like, how do you feel about how productive Jacksonville's pass rush is?
All right, so they weren't getting sacks, but they were getting pressure. And you've heard the coaches where pressure is just as good as sacks. No, not really. Because pressure, you can't get a sack without pressure, right? But if you let a guy throw the ball away, it's 2nd and 10. If you sack him, it's 2nd and 18. So no, one thing is worse than the other. Sometimes it's just situational football, and that's what it is. But I will tell you, as of late, Trayvon's been out. And I think the same thing that happened to the offense kind of happened to the defense. Guys realize we got to pick it up. So when you go next man up and you say you got to pick it up and you bypass Emmanuel Ogbah, who was your veteran free agent, 3rd edge rusher that's supposed to give you what a veteran brings, and you start playing faster guys like Danny Strigo and BJ Green, 2 rookies that were undrafted, and you see the speed. And then you start getting Dennis Gardeck, who's a Sam linebacker, more involved. And then you start sending people from different places to make up for the fact that Walker's not there. And over the last couple of games, it's looked pretty good. Now, take it for what it's worth, the last few games have been the Raiders, Houston, Arizona, and Tennessee. Take it for what it's worth, man. But the thing is getting home is getting home. This is the NFL. The key to it is putting people in a position where they got to throw it every single time and you not being in prevent. Get a big lead and then let your guys cook. The problem is the Jaguars were stumbling and bumbling around a lot early in the year, and they weren't getting out to big leads, with the exception of the game against Houston, where they gave up 19 points. They lost a 19-point lead in the 4th quarter. It was kind of fluky, but Houston did what they had to do. But the only thing is, man, sometimes there's no magic wand to it. Guys that are on the field just have to play better. And that's what they've done. They've played better.
NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, FanDuel.com is the place to go place your live NFL bets all season. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
This week, it's all about one game. Indiana and Ohio State battling for the Big Ten title.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Ohio State and Indiana for the Big Ten championship game, my friends.
It's wild, man. If you were to talk to me about 10 years ago, or even when the Big Ten put this championship game into reality, and you ask me if in 2025 Ohio State would be playing Indiana 1-2 matchup in the Big Ten title, I would have said you're crazy. I would have said you're ludicrous. Like, there's absolutely no way in my head at that time that Indiana would be able to have a team good enough to even be 1 or 2 in the country, let alone at the same time being top in the conference to have a shot to win the Big Ten title. But here we are. The Hoosiers are really good. The Buckeyes are really good too. This is to me the biggest game of the weekend. And once again, ESPN College Game Day, they miss a mark and going to a marquee game that fits a Big Ten opponent. It was almost a understood thing to me, like, oh, they're absolutely going to go to Indiana. No, they're not. They're going to go down to Atlanta once again. It's almost like something like they have a contract maybe to go to Atlanta for the SEC title game. I'm being sarcastic a little bit, but
it seems like it though. Yeah, it does. And so, I don't know how you skip on the number 1 team in the country versus the number 2 team in the country, but I think you and I both would agree that Ohio State is number 1 for a reason, and Indiana is number 2 for a reason. These are the 2 best teams in college football. Now, there are some really good ones behind us, right? Texas Tech and Oregon and Georgia and Alabama and things like that. But, man, it's no doubt. I mean, these 2 teams have dominated. They're undefeated in the regular season. They really haven't played a whole lot of close games, and when they did, they took care of those games. Ohio State even more so than Indiana. And so it's fascinating to see what this game is going to become. And we're going to talk about Ryan Day versus Kurt Signetti here in a moment, talk about the Heisman Trophy basically being up for grabs in this game between Mendoza and Julian Sayin, and then we'll make our predictions at the end. But Ohio State got some news this week, my friend, about Brian Hartline, the OC and wide receivers coach, heading down to South Florida, but sounds like he's going to finish out the season, right?
Oh, yes, he is. That's a huge benefit for Ryan Day because while Hartline is now going to be the head coach at USF, and I'm happy for him. First off, I'm very happy for him. It was almost an expected thing at some point this offseason or next offseason that he would become a head coach at some level. Yeah, you would love for it to be a power conference team, but you're the American. I have a lot of respect for those teams in that conference, and so hats off to him, his family going down to Florida, a place where he played NFL football in the Sunshine State for, I think, 6 or 7 years. He was there with the Dolphins, so he's going back to familiar territory. I'm happy for him. I'm also happy he's sticking around.
Yeah.
Going into this game, if Ryan Day had to take over play calling at full time while also being the head coach of the team, that could be a formula that could be disastrous for Ohio State to where Signetti could take advantage of it. It is not saying Ryan Day can't be a great play caller. We know he is. But if you're trying to do something for the first time all year in the biggest game of the season, a little bit tricky to do so. So I think it's big for Ohio State that they're keeping Hartline. Moving forward, it's a massive loss. I mean, even Chris Henry Jr., at the time of this recording, hasn't signed with anybody yet on the first day of the early signing period. Right now, it seems like it's down to Oregon and Ohio State, and Oregon's pushing very hard to land a 5-star receiver. Not shocked that they're doing that, but that's the Hartline effect. Hartline's not there. The young man may go somewhere else to play college football.
Yeah, I mean, he's such a good coordinator. And I was telling you before we hit record, I thought he would have taken an even bigger job. And not that South Florida's not a big job or not a good job, especially for your first head coaching gig, but I just thought a P4 team was going to snatch him up. But I still think he'll find his way to a P4 team at some point. But the big news is the idea that he's finishing out the season. So Indiana still has to go up against that Brian Hartline offense, but it's an Indiana defense. And our buddy Spencer McLaughlin on Locked On College Football was talking to me the other day, and he said, I'm kind of surprised that the Indiana coordinators haven't been poached yet with Shanahan on offense and Bryant Haynes on defense, because I think they're 2 of the best coordinators in college football. When you look at the numbers, man, it doesn't get better than what Indiana's doing on both sides and what Ohio State's doing on both sides, and that's why these 2 teams are meeting on Saturday in Indianapolis.
It doesn't. And I think the Shanahan thing is it's tricky, but also, if I'm not crazy, or if my memory is working correctly, I believe he's had a long track record of being with Signetti for quite a long time, which that could be a big reason why he is sticking around with him. Also, Indiana football is going to pump a lot more money into the contracts for these coaches, and that could be a major selling point. Like, hey, stick around, we'll pay you, you'll keep winning, you'll stay at the top of the polls, and you'll get the bonuses at the end of the year. So that's a major thing as well. Yep. But these coordinators on both sides, not just Indiana's coordinators, but also Ohio State's coordinators, these are 2 of the best duos in the country on both sides. It's weird that they're both in the Big Ten, but Matt Patricia's been, oh my gosh, so much fun to watch with the smile and how happy he is and the joy being at Ohio State has brought to his life and seeing the connections he has made with players like Cade McDonald and Caleb Downs. And I think it's going to be a big reason why those guys are going to go all out, not just for the title to be at the top of the Big Ten, but they're going to go all out for their coach because they genuinely love this man and love being coached by him.
And then you got the guys at the top. It's Ryan Day, the young, fiery guy who gets going and finally gets over the Michigan hump, which we'll get to in a little bit. And then Curt Cignetti, the old guy, he wears glasses. He doesn't say a whole lot, but he says a lot when he doesn't say a lot, if that makes any sense. And two guys that are completely different, but at their core, Jay, they're just football dudes, and they are so good at what they do. And I cannot wait to see them go up against each other and what they have up their sleeve for each other on Saturday night.
It's going to be a battle, man. It's going to be a battle. One thing I think when it comes to these two head coaches, they both have their formulas. They both have their styles, and they don't normally go away from it. But this year's been weird for Ryan Day. Not weird in a bad way, but Ryan Day has not been the attack or highly explosive passing offense that you're used to. No, it's been very slow and methodical, and the approach has led to the Buckeyes having the most efficient offense in the country. I think they also have one of the slower offenses in the country, too. So the pace is slow, but the pace is very efficient. And that's one thing to watch in this game. Against Michigan, Ryan Day said we're going to attack. And the first two plays, one to the right side of Cardinal Tate, incomplete pass. The second pass of the game to Jeremiah Smith, great defense, might I add, that led to an interception. I wonder if Ryan Day is going to attack any way that he did against Tennessee and Oregon in last year's playoff. Because if he does, and if these guys stay healthy, we still are not sure if these guys are 100%. But if Ryan Day decides to attack, I think that's a major benefit for the Buckeyes moving forward.
And Indiana's defense is going to be tested. Good news is you've got some NFL dudes back there. So does Ohio State. But Indiana has D'Angelo Pons, who I expect to be put on Jeremiah Smith. And then it's figuring out, well, who covers Carnell Tate, who covers a tight end, and who covers everybody else for Ohio State. But between Ryan Day and Curt Cignetti and the coordinators, the coaching matchup is phenomenal.
NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, FanDuel.com is the place to go place your live NFL bets all season. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Chris Level. So you mentioned the fact that looking forward to this with these two teams, and they're both of them first time appearances in the Big 12 championship game. We'll talk about that, but big news in Provo, obviously, this week with the highly publicized Kalani Sitake contract situation. Penn State coming after him hot and heavy. He ultimately decides, I'm staying put. BYU comes up with some assurances in terms of salary for himself, taking care of his staff, and more importantly, much like Texas Tech, guaranteeing an amount of money, reportedly between $10 and $15 million on top of the House settlement cap that are essentially, it looks like these two programs, speaking of Tech and BYU, have every intention of maintaining their position, and it appears, as 1-2 in this league.
There are levels to this. I think what you're seeing is that some schools out there weren't fully funding the House settlement rev share. There's some haggling in some departments as it relates to how much would be allocated to football versus other sports. And I think what you're seeing here is that these are two football programs that are fully vested. And I think they're willing to go above and beyond what it takes, because that's what it takes. I mean, I think that's, if you want to play at a very, very high level. And both of these coaches got new contracts this week. I mean, you start out the week, and both of these coaches woefully underpaid compared to their contemporaries.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's just a fact.
Mm-hmm.
Go look around the Big 12 and you'll see a lot of salaries in the $7-8 million range, $5 million range, whatever. These two coaches started this week out. Neither one of them was making anywhere close to like $5 million, right? A year. They are now. they are now and deserve every penny, because these are, we talked about this the last time before these two teams played the first time.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of similarities between these two men. And it's about fit in college football in 2025, and it's about culture. Yes, you need resources. Yes, you need scheme. Yes, you need to be able to recruit and all that stuff. But it's really about like gluing it together, making it work, and squeezing everything you can. Because a lot of people have recruited well, a lot of people have great schemes. But it's the secret sauce is the culture, and I'm glad that that Kalani and Joey are one. They're good friends. They've known each other for a long time. A lot of mutual respect there, and they are culture people. This is what it takes. You have players that will play really hard for these men because they are quality humans, and that is rare in this industry.
Well, and to that point, a lot of people want to point to the Tech and BYU are buying their way to the top, Chris. Here's the deal. I think you and I have enough experience doing what we've done in media and the like. We've seen programs both in the Big 12 and beyond in college football throw money at the problem, and it's nothing more than just a problem. That's what it is. It becomes a team of mercenaries, and the second something happens that's negative, they fracture. The point you just made there, culture. There needs to be, I call it the total package. You have to have, obviously, the money, because that's, you can't get away from that in this day and age of college football. With the resources and the amount of money that can be allocated to these players, that's always going to be a part of the conversation here. But it has to be more than that. BYU is a church-affiliated university. I know Texas Tech, if I'm mistaken, is land grant, but they have, with both these coaches, they've instilled culture in these programs, and that goes beyond just the amount of money these players are making, and that's why they're at these universities. They play for more than that, and you're right. They play for these coaches, and that makes the difference, it feels like, with these two programs, because we've seen other Big 12 programs, they've had nowhere near the success, even though they may have allocated as much, if not more money.
Money has been discussed and written about, and way too much as it relates to these two situations. What hasn't been, the story that hasn't been told, is the culture and the evaluation, the development. Those are the parts, because there's a lot of schools that are throwing a lot of money at this deal. I mean, look at LSU. LSU had one of the top portal classes in the country a year ago, and were picked in the top 10 in the country preseason, and they didn't fare so well. So A&M had one of the number one recruiting classes 2 or 3 years ago. Jimbo Fisher got a whole bunch of money to go away because he couldn't make it all work. So but that's the reason why you're looking at 2 11-win teams right now, is because of that secret sauce, and for men leading them, in my opinion, that just haven't gotten enough credit.
Yeah, you're right. And I love the fact on Monday when they had the press conference, both Joey and Kalani, you could tell they have a deep admiration for one another. Kalani's joking about going out to eat with Joey and gaining weight. You can tell they are two guys who, there's more to life for them than just football, but it doesn't hurt that they're really, really darn good football coaches. And as you mentioned, they have brought more to the table than, just having, in your case, Cody Campbell with the oil money, funding things at Texas Tech, and at BYU, people like Ryan Smith or Jason McGowan, who's kind of become like the cookie man.
Hey, man. I love me a good crumble cookie, man. I had one a week ago, an iced oatmeal, and it was phenomenal. So kudos to you. I had no idea I was donating to such a good cause.
Well, I think a lot of college football fans found out this week what they were donating to with that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But there is more to it than just, throwing money at this problem and thinking it's going to solve itself. You have to have leaders of men, and these two coaches very much are that.
Yeah, and they have both earned the right to play in an unbelievable setting come Saturday morning, where the lights will be very bright. I think there's a lot of national interest in this game, because fans that don't have a dog in the fight will be rooting for one or the other based on how it affects their team or their league or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's in its own window.
Yeah.
The last game that was played in that stadium, it just came out that 57 million people viewed it between the Cowboys and the Chiefs. It's not going to set that kind of record, right? Yeah. But it is setting an attendance record, on pace to do that. I'm not shocked, not even a little bit, that that's what is happening. I know how well BYU travels. Texas Tech fans are the largest alumni base for Texas Tech is in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Yeah. And so it doesn't shock me. I think it's got a chance to get over 90,000 in there and more if that's what what we get. But Joey's coached in that building. I think he told me 13, 14 times as a high school coach or as a staff member at Baylor. And so, but it's just it's a football mecca is what that place is. That's what it is. I mean, and Jerry doesn't do a lot of things well, but he builds really nice stuff. And that it's shocking that thing is, approaching 20 years old already, but it's still state of the art. And just don't get caught looking at the video board too much, because no matter how many times you've been in there, you're like, goodness, that is a large television.
So I toured it in 2008 before it officially opened, and we'll get to more of that in a moment. But I also was there when they had the last time they had Big 12 Media Days in there. So it's 2023, BYU's first year in the Big 12. I went down to Big 12 Media Days, and I'm telling you, Chris, they had all the stuff on the field. I was standing at the 50-yard line. I remember kind of looking up and being like, this place is cavernous. It is like it's everything I've ever envisioned it being. And I can only imagine, you're right, 90,000+ fans on Saturday filling this place. It's got to be absolutely electric and have kind of the hair on the back of your neck stand up on end. And I'm fully expecting that from these two fan bases, because they are ultra motivated to see their teams ultimately hoist a banner here, win a Big 12 title, and obviously live their college football playoff dreams.
Yeah. And the roof will be closed, so all that noise stays in there. Yeah, and it's funny because obviously there's going to be a lot of Texas Tech people there, but they even said earlier in the week, Joey was like, and I think Baron Morton said, yeah, we're working on our silent count and our cadences because we know that BYU is going to bring a lot of people there too. So there's just nothing like the neutral site bowl type atmosphere, but this is a bit different because somebody will get to hold up a conference championship trophy and something that they both desperately want.
NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, FanDuel.com is the place to go place your live NFL bets all season. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes.
Miami beats number 22 Pitt on the road. They don't move up. They stay at number 12, and you got to be in the top 10 by next week. 12 is not good enough. I see the committee giving Alabama a little bit of cushion. So Bama beats 5-7 Auburn by a touchdown, and they were so moved by that Alabama performance that they moved Bama up from number 10 to number 9, which is starting to make Notre Dame fans sweat a little bit, by the way. And I got some more shocking committee facts to talk about here. But you, Kelvin, throughout this whole process, you've been telling me not to worry, that if Miami keeps winning and they kept winning, that they're going to be in. Do you still feel that way?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Why?
I think the committee, I was just on my Twitter feed and I saw a clip from a Notre Dame website where the guy was telling them, be nervous, be real nervous. He actually said, hey, if BYU loses and Alabama loses, Miami's going to probably get in over us. And I was like, okay, and he's probably right.
So let me ask you a follow-up question there. So what the scenario you're at, and by the way, to give you credit, I was watching the committee chair, Hunter Yurachek, who comes off like a bumbling idiot, but Yurachek did keep the door open. Like they asked him, is it possible for teams who are idle this weekend to change their rankings? And he said yes. And he was specifically asked about the Miami Notre Dame scenario, and he didn't rule out. And the implication here is that since Miami and Notre Dame have always had at least one team in between them, usually multiple teams, but right now the only team that's in between Miami and Notre Dame is BYU. So since they've always had teams in between them, they've never been forced to, hey, if they were ranked back-to-back, we'd be forced to push Miami up because of the head-to-head. So the thought there would be that if BYU loses to Texas Tech this weekend, and then theoretically if Miami and Notre Dame are separated by just one spot, that they would put Miami over. But like, what? If they thought Miami deserves it more than Notre Dame, why not rank Miami in front of Notre Dame now? Why wait till Sunday?
Because they probably would have every Catholic in America calling, politicking, bothering them. And when they make the announcement on Sunday, it's final. There's no politicking that can happen. It's you just got to take it, just like when your mom comes in with the casserole, you just got to swallow it and just have the bitter beer face. And so, they're just basically trying to avoid confrontation here and actually have a little drama too, because there's probably I'm expecting Bama to move. They're gonna be on the bubble if they lose, depending on how bad they lose to Georgia. And it's going to be interesting. If you're Notre Dame, you got to be rooting for Georgia as well, because if Georgia beats Alabama bad enough, there's a good chance that maybe both us and Notre Dame get in. A couple of scenarios.
Yeah.
But we deserve to be in. We deserve to be in.
Yeah, and just say we'll let you campaign a little bit, Kelvin. I mean, tell the people at home in their cars why, in your mind, Miami is one of the top teams in the country and why they should be in the college football playoff.
We have all of the elements. We're probably the most complete team. We have maybe the best offensive line in the country. We've got quarterback playing at a high level. We got a good running game. Got a great receiver. We got a great D-line, excellent secondary. And if need be, we can special teams, our kickers and our returners are good as well. Yeah. There is no, weakness on this team. Now, there's some weak spots every now and then, weak moments, but we can run. We can beat you running the ball. We can beat you throwing the ball. And I look at Ohio State. Ohio State boils down to three players, really four: the quarterback, two receivers, Smith, Tate, Caleb Downs, and Arvell Reese.
Right.
Those are the standout players. There's nothing special about their O-linemen. They don't have a pass rusher. The best pass rusher is Kenyatta Jackson for Fort Lauderdale for Broward County, and he is not in the same league. He's not even in the same league as, say, Lightfoot. Matt Patricia does a great job with the coverages and the blitzes, and that's what confuses a lot of quarterbacks and some offensive coordinators, because he's bringing pro stuff to college. But if you match us up man for man, we're a bit more talented than Ohio State. Definitely more talented than Indiana. It's just that we got to get in, and we got to play up to our potential if we do get in.
Yeah, and when we come back, I want to get Kelvin's reaction to some really damning stats and evidence to see why the committee is just being so inconsistent on the way that they're punishing Miami and not punishing other teams in the same exact situation.